Is a periodic password change a good thing? Hi everyone, I'm Leo Notenboom for askleo.com. Be sure and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button down below and get notified whenever there's a new Ask Leo video that get released throughout the week. Hit the like button when you're done if you actually appreciated this video. That will help others find the answers they're looking for as they're searching for things on YouTube. So this turns out to be an interesting question, and it has actually encroached into pet peeve territory on my part. Let me read you the original question. I read many articles, including some on Ask Leo, that recommend that people should change their passwords from time to time. But what is good practice in this respect? Should it be related to frequency of use? For instance, some passwords are used frequently, some less often, and some rarely. Or should it be related to the level of security needed? For instance, passwords for online banking are more sensitive than passwords for magazine subscriptions. Good practice in a corporate environment seems to be to force network and other password changes every 30 days or so. This would seem to be overkill in the home environment, as it could result in some accounts being accessed more often to change a password than to do anything else. Unless you get into a good routine, like when you do data backups, password changes will only get done sporadically, if at all. Do you have a view on how to build such a good routine? As you say, routines for things like this are difficult to set up, absolutely. But I have a much more fundamental problem with the concept. Yep, I don't believe a periodic password change is necessary. Absolutely conventional wisdom is that you should change your password every so often. I disagree. I just do. There is no good reason that I'm aware of to do that. Passwords don't get worse over time. They just exist. They're as good on the day you set them as they are 6 months or 30 days or 90 days or whatever it is later. There are some scenarios where you'll want to change your password, but the fact that some time has passed isn't really a strong reason for doing it at all. I strongly suggest that you not do a periodic password change. It simply makes passwords that much more difficult to remember and manage. The only time a password change, a periodic password change, actually would have what I would consider to be a tiny or add a tiny sliver of security is if a database was breached that somehow exposed your password, but that was not used for a month or 6 months or something like that. Yeah, I suppose hackers can do that. And the fact that you change your password every 30 days means that the password that they stole 31 days ago is no longer valid. But in reality, hackers are quicker than that. If they steal your password today, they're going to use it tomorrow, and there's just no approach to changing your password fast enough that's really going to add any significant amount of security in this scenario. At least that's my feeling. What I believe is much more important is that you keep your password safe to begin with. And that means the usual litany of things related to passwords. Choose a good password. Length matters more than anything else. Make sure it's at least 12, 16. I use 20 characters. Use random characters if you like. Use multiple words to make it longer. Use patterns to make it longer. Use something that works for you to make it longer. Right now, length is the single most important thing you can use in your password to make it more secure. Don't tell anyone your password. I continue to be surprised at how many individuals are willing to share their passwords, be it with significant others, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. Especially in the early days of a relationship. Just don't. I mean, yes, my wife and I share passwords, but we've been married for 40 years. I think we'd have larger problems at this point. And to be fair, it's a risk. It absolutely is a risk that we're both cognizant of, and the convenience, in our case at least, outweighs that risk. But especially when you're in those early days, those early years, maybe sharing a password isn't quite the thing to do. The other thing is that I see people being willing to share complete account access with me, with tech support people, which again is incredibly dangerous and incredibly risky. Unless you are absolutely certain, unless you've been married for 40 years, don't share your password with anyone. There's rarely a legitimate reason to do that. Don't write it down. Again, this is one of those things where people like to write down their passwords to make it easy for them to remember. In and of itself, that's not a problem as long as that slip of paper is itself stored securely. It never is. It's always sitting next to the computer or under a mouse pad or in a, taped to the backside of a door in the same room, or any number of different things that people think are hiding the password, but in reality, no. The thieves, people that enter your home, they know where to look if in fact they're looking for the passwords to your accounts. Don't reuse passwords. This one is critical. If your one account gets hacked, you don't want to open the door to all your other accounts because they all happen to use the same password. Use a different password on every site. Use whatever tools you have at your disposal to manage that, but make sure that you're using a different password on every site. This is one of the biggest reasons we're seeing a lot of accounts get compromised these days, because people do suffer a data breach on one service they're using, and then all of a sudden this other service they're using is hacked at the same time, simply because they were using the same password on both sites. Now, of course, I'm saying use long, strong, complicated passwords and use a different one on every site. How do you manage all that? You know my answer to that. Use a password manager. This is a tool that's dedicated to using or managing multiple different long, strong passwords on different sites with ease. It enables the maximum amount of security that you can have when it comes to managing multiple passwords. In my case, I happen to use LastPass. All of my passwords, when I create them these days, are 20 characters of completely random letters and numbers. That's great. I would never be able to remember those. LastPass remembers them for me. If I weren't using a password manager of some sort, I would have to come up with some kind of a scheme that would be less secure, that I would have to be able to remember on my own. That's not going to happen. The most secure thing you can do, it is more secure than any other approach to managing multiple passwords, is to use a password manager of some sort. If you're hacked, yes, that's when you change your password. If you hear of a data breach, that's when you change your password. It's not that time has passed. It's because something has happened. There is reason to believe you are at additional risk. If your account gets hacked, or even if it just looks like it's been hacked, that's a great time to change the password. If you hear that your service has suffered a data breach, that's a great time to change your password. Many times, many of the services will force you to change your password when that happens. Those are the times that password changes make a tremendous amount of sense. It has nothing to do with the amount of time that's passed. It's about there being a real reason that has put your account at additional risk that a password change will save you from as quickly as possible. And of course, lastly, consider two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is such that even if someone knows your password, be it changed 30 days ago or changed 5 minutes ago, they still can't log into your machine because they don't have the second factor. And to counter some of the objections, any two-factor is better than no two-factor at all. Yes, some forms of two-factor authentications are better than others. The Google Authenticator is better than SMS. I recommend Google Authenticator if you have the opportunity to use it. But even if the service offers only SMS two-factor authentication, consider using it, because using it puts an additional barrier between you and the hackers trying to get into your account. The question that was originally asked, of course, was, well, essentially, how do I automate this? Honestly, if a periodic password change is something that's important to you, even though so far I've claimed that it's not, if you still want to do it, I actually don't know of a way to automate the process. The best thing I can suggest is that you set up a reminder in your calendar app and every so often go through the process of changing the password on the accounts you think need a periodic password change. Needless to say, that's not something I do. I want to end with a story that indicates just how useless a periodic password change, a forced periodic password change, can be. The scenario is this. An individual is working at a company that requires a periodic password change. They require that every 30 days you change your password to a password you hadn't used in the last, I'll say, 6 passwords. So it's something that's different than your last 6 passwords. There are individuals who, every 30 days, will very carefully change their password 7 times, one more than is necessary, so that they can change it back to the password that they started with. The net result for them? They were able to avoid the password change by changing the password that many times. It seems like a pain, and yet it's important enough to them to keep the one password that they know that they will completely bypass this security enforcement. Users can be innovative at getting what they want. For the original article on which this video is based, which goes into things in a little bit more detail, has updates, comments, and related links, visit askleo.com/4294. I'm Leo Notenboom. This is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.